Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Coatings Talk. Today's conversation sits right at the turning point of our industry. Across coatings, corrosion, inspection, and asset integrity, the ground is shifting under our feet. Asset owners are modernizing, contractors are being pushed to deliver more with leaner crews, inspection firms are navigating new standards, new expectations, and there's a new generation of skilled workers that are entering the field with a completely different mindset. We're all living through a moment where technology, workforce capability, and operational pressures are all accelerating at the same time. Intelligent technologies, digital transformation, automation, and data driven decision making aren't future concepts anymore. They're reshaping how we protect assets right now. And that modernization comes with a new demand: talent that can adapt, that can learn, that can collaborate, and that can lead inside this rapidly evolving environment. And that's why today's topic matters so much. And that's why I have a guest here today that can help us navigate through this. Charlie Hill is a lead recruiter in midstream oil and gas with Pangea, a firm that has become one of the most trusted names in identifying high impact professionals across coatings, corrosion, asset integrity, and other fields as well. Charlie works directly with companies who are filling the workforce shift as it's changing: pipeline operators, industrial contractors, inspection firms, and engineering groups that are searching for the next generation of leaders and technical professionals who can thrive in a modernized industry. He really sees the talent trends out there, he sees the gaps, and he knows the opportunities. Charlie, welcome to Coatings Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I'm excited to talk about the workforce shift and talent in our industry. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
not a problem. And for everyone watching, they're going to be asking, tell a little bit about yourself and also talk about Pangea and what Pangea does.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an within energy recruitment for in and around 11 years now. So I started in the UK placing asset integrity professionals all across the globe. Took me from Turkey, North Africa, all across Europe and in the UK. And then for the last 4 or 5 years now, been based here in Texas, really focusing in on the corrosion, asset integrity, and coatings world in North America. So that's sort of where I've been and where this role has taken me, placing people across the world. And Pangea, so we've been it's a fun story. I joined Pangea about 10 years ago, had a bit of a hiatus with another business, but recently joined back. We were able to provide sort of a full suite of recruitment solutions from temp, contract, statement of work, and direct hire, which is generally where I focus in on more across oil and gas, power, water, essentially the critical energy infrastructure world from an asset integrity perspective.
Excellent. We're going to open up and talk about the current state of the protective coatings and corrosion workforce, but this really transcends across different industries, no matter what, especially in these current days and everything like that. The first question I'd ask you is, across, let's say, coatings, corrosion, anything to do with like skilled labor, industrial side, what are some of the trends that you're seeing out there when it comes to hiring, the skill shortages, and what are some of the emerging role types that are in high demand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes.
From a hiring trends perspective, I think firstly it's absolutely good news, right? I think if you're a great worker, there's always a huge demand for talent in our industry at every single level. So I think initially it's all positive. I think where sort of the biggest needle mover, the biggest change I've seen over the last couple of years in our industry is moving away from a focus on 15, 20, 25 years experience doing XYZ, and now looking at stuff what traditionally we would have called that softer skill, but ability to learn, adapt, having that transferable skills is sort of a big shift we're seeing on the hiring trend standpoint. And then a couple of little things from office and field-based work. So from the office roles, we're seeing a bit of an uptick in customers wanting to see people with that field experience, being able to like understand what they're from an engineering perspective, what they're putting in the field or operations perspective, from a sales perspective, having that application knowledge on what you're talking to customers about. And then from a field perspective, because you're as a guy in the field or a girl in the field, you're essentially that first line of support, talking to that customer on a daily basis. So having or at least interviewing for more of that communication, data interpretation skill set means that you can be that sort of customer technical SME on site. And we're seeing a lot more requests come through or a lot more questioning around that communication and data interpretation standpoint.
Yeah, the biggest impact in the last number of years to coatings and corrosion in a lot of industries was the pandemic. The pandemic forced a lot of people to take retirement. Some who were, senior personnel who decided to hold on. A lot of them decided, you know what, maybe this is the time to go ahead and retire and move on or do something completely different. And then we've seen a lot of jobs, roles, and things like that kind of shift and get changed around. Currently,
100%.
yeah, and the other aspect is, and especially in the coatings and corrosion industry, we are seeing an aging of the workforce that's out there. You're seeing a lot more senior people when it comes to anything from technical roles to inspection. Even the challenge that's happening with the industrial painters, the craft workers, the younger generation, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to want to stick in the trades. And that's always been a challenge. It seems like more for the last 2 decades. But even after the pandemic, a very big challenge to be able to retain people to replace the skilled craft workers that are out there. Now, we also seen a rise of what I would call the hybrid roles, where you have, coatings professionals doing a little more than what they might have done in the past. They have to be a little bit more flexible. Maybe they're the type of person where they're very technical, but then they're also on demand on project sites, doing inspections, assessments, and other things like that. You integrate into that the move towards digital transformation, both in coatings and corrosion. And that has also caused a big skills area where there's a lot of gap that needs to be addressed as well. And then on top of that, with all the data that we're collecting digitally, it really provides an opportunity for the industry to utilize that data, interpret that data, analyze that data, but become more proactive than reactive. And that's also requires a lot of skill set. Let's talk a little bit about digital pressure points, how technology is reshaping coatings and corrosion, especially on the talent need. As I just had said, there are a lot of AI-enabled uh, technologies out there that are disruptive, but they're very productive as well, especially when it comes to inspection, robotics, UAVs that are performing work, and then also too automated surface prep systems. They're all entering the field. They do require talent to be able to operate, understand, and work them as well. And we're seeing that shift, really a big shift from that traditional, brush and spray only. Those skill sets are critical, they're important, but you gotta have that technology, you gotta have that advanced mechanical type of approach as well when it comes to operating equipment and things like that. Let me ask you a question, because you are out there and you're looking at individuals, you're qualifying individuals. Uh, there is a big competency gap that has been created because of the rush in of technology, and that's because of the way the legacy side of coatings and corrosions has always been. Are you finding, when you do recruitment or when you're hiring either for contract or part-time basis to help out, Is there a challenge with a lot of the available workforce in coatings and corrosion when it becomes for them to be digitally augmented to be able to work with digital systems? Are you finding that?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I think it's hard to, particularly on a contract or temp basis, particularly sort of expect people to come in with that knowledge. I think where the companies that are adopting this digital transformation and technology in the world of coatings and corrosion are the ones that bring people in from, let's say, a 3, 6, 9 month job or however long, to bring them in on a career basis, bring them in and from a career arc perspective, see that sort of 5, 10 year play within that business. And you've genuinely got a place long term within that company. I think is where the hiring from a customer's perspective is changing, is sort of as having that or testing for that continual improvement, that learning development sort of hunger from an employee means that from a mindset perspective, they're staying current, they're really on top of where the market's moving from a digital perspective, and they can be successful whatever the market throws at us, right? I think no one had really heard of AI 10 years ago. I think that's fair to say. I think, and now it's everywhere. It's you can't put a shopping list together without using AI nowadays. So I think people who have that continuous improvement mindset, that learning development, that hunger to want to grow and progress in their career means that they're going to be successful wherever they land, particularly on that sort of bringing people in from that career arc perspective, not just I need a job doing tomorrow.
Yeah, in my experience in recent years related to digital transformation in coatings and corrosion, there's two areas. The first is that companies, contractors, manufacturers, service providers, anyone who really even supports the coatings and corrosion industries, a lot of these companies have not really fully embraced digital transformation. They kind of try a little bit with AI, like Copilot and things like that, but they're really not integrating it, and it's really a disservice to themselves because the current trajectory of AI is that it's going to, and robotics too, it's there to augment the worker. It's there to augment the business operation. It's there to be utilized as a decision process resource as well. There's so many things that AI can do, robotics and things like that as well. And I think the biggest gap that's happening is that companies don't really fully understand that. And some of the aspects that I do through my other, so I do audio podcast called The Digital Revolution with Jim Kunkel. Now I don't talk about coatings and corrosion, but I talk about all things AI, intelligent technologies, and digital transformation. And what I think is important is for the companies in coatings and corrosion to now start to understand exactly what AI, what advanced robotics, what these tools can do for their assets. But on top of that, that will also force craft workers, professionals, inspectors, whoever they're looking to hire, either full time, contract with, or work with, force them to get those developmental skills that they're going to need because with the augmentations coming, you've got to be skilled. And if you're skilled, you're in a better position as that augmentation happens than not having any type of understanding of how to utilize these disruptive technologies. Are you finding the same type of gap that's out there when you're talking in coatings and corrosion with some of the owners? You don't have to name any, but owners and also the contractors out there. Do you have the same feeling from that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's fair to say. There's always going to be an adoption curve. I think there's always early adopters. There's people once it gets to critical mass, where I see the people that are successful, the companies, the individuals that are successful are looking at it from a human factors perspective. So if your workforce doesn't trust the tools, they won't use them properly. If they don't use them properly, you'll get bad data. And if you get bad data, the digital investment fails ultimately, and the business is then questioning the whole modernization agenda. And we go back to this is how we used to do it. So I think if we look at it from a human capital perspective or a human factor perspective, companies that are building trust with their employees, with their leadership, implementing it, and giving people the space to say, I don't know how this works yet, without it affecting their career in any long-term standpoint. And they can admit when it goes wrong. They're the ones that are really succeeding and being successful in this field with the digital adoption.
Let's talk about the new competencies, what the next generation of I'm going to focus on the coatings professional, what they look like. And this is really kind of that hybrid aspect. Um, when it comes to coatings fundamentals, and what I mean by that, a professional who works, they could be anything from a protective coating specialist, they could be someone who supports the coatings industry, they could work for a coating manufacturer in marketing, sales, whatever the function might be. They really need to make sure that they do, in addition to having the understanding of protective coatings, both technically and how they're utilized, and also other type of important information regarding that, have that digital literacy. And what I mean by that is to be able to utilize digital assets that are out there to be able to better their job, but also better communicate, better to deliver information, potentially utilize that for strategy planning and also working with customers and owners and whoever they're going to be working with. So the importance thing in the past was just having that fundamental of coatings knowledge, being a subject matter expert meant everything. But in the future, that, in addition to digital literacy, is going to be a huge benefit for that professional. Another area dealing in the application and surface preparation, we're seeing the rise of autonomous, semi-autonomous, autonomous, but more so semi-autonomous because of safety issues and other type of things that are going on. The drones that spray paint, for example, the crawlers that do water jetting, so on the surface prep side, we're starting to see these technologies come in there, the robotics, the aerial platforms as well. So having a fundamental understanding of, yes, I'm a certified, a C7 blaster, but I'm also a C12 applicator. In the past, having that CAS, all the different certifications you need to have was really critically important, along with the field experience and everything like that. But you also have to be ready to be that your crew that you're on. You might be called upon to be the drone operator, or you might be operating the crawler that's actually out there hydroblasting and things like that. So looking at how the technologies, the robotics, the aerial platforms are going to be intermixed with the human crews performing surface preparation and coating application, that automation readiness is super critical as well. Another area on the inspection side, again, being a level 3 CIP peer review, having your ICOR as an ICOR inspector or whatever certifications you might have, experience and things like that. It's very important to have that, but you also have to make sure that you're utilizing the digital intelligent tools that are out there, the ones that do have AI in there to help in the inspection process, to catalog data, take the data, report the data instantaneously in most cases. That's how amazing this stuff is. But also take that data that could be incorporated potentially into future uh, digital twins. So can you imagine having an offshore asset that your coatings and corrosion that you're doing inspection on has a digital twin, and you could be able to run scenarios of failures or problem areas, be able to deal with these assets, these critical assets before they become a problem, to be proactive instead of reactive. And another area would be in safety leadership. I think we're seeing a lot of safety resources that are also incorporating AI, also with smart cameras to be able to video monitor and things like that as well. And the big thing I always would like to talk to everybody is on the communication side. You need to make sure you have strong communication, that you do have the cross-disciplinary collaboration, that you're ever able to work with other trades, with other groups, with other teams as well. And really, for a coatings and corrosion professional, this is going to help you really not survive, but to really grow as we move into a more modern asset protection environment. I said a lot there, Charlie.
Yeah.
Is there anything I didn't say?
No, so just to add to that point,
Yeah,
really, I
good.
think, and a big mistake a lot of companies make is similar to the one candidates have historically made, sort of
Yeah.
treating your certs, either your CIP, API, PMP, CFSE, whichever ones they are, as a destination rather than a direction, right? They signal sort of commitment and competency, not just one or the other. I think where or what's the most durable skill isn't necessarily technology specific. It's learning how to learn, being inquisitive, staying current, building that cross disciplinary fluency. That capability compounded over 15, 20, 30-year career is the biggest thing people can look at today to make an influence in their longevity in a career in our industry. I think of your career as a portfolio rather than a linear path of
Mhm.
and a 5, 10 year arc rather than just your next job, your next cert, and you'll be in for a winner from a compounding perspective, looking at a long-term career in our industry.
Yeah, I think the days of just obtaining certifications, which in the past I think meant a ton. It's what got
Mm.
you jobs and moved you forward. But you need more than that to be able to move into the modern world, to move into the future. So let's move into leadership transition. I know you work with a lot. You're not working with HR, just HR people on that side. You're working also too with people who run operations and divisions and all that kind of stuff on the management level, especially when you look at those leaders, what they must do differently. And the first thing I always point out is that leaders have to shift from the task assignment to the capability development. And this is across maybe work crews they have, maybe inspection teams that they have, if they're an inspection firm. If they're an owner, they're going to have a corrosion and integrity team. They might even have a paint team as well, or works on the coatings team and things like that. What are some of the things that you recommend? And again, it could be related to what you do, but also professionally, you as a professional
Yeah.
working with talent. What recommendations do you have to move from that task assignment to a capability development? What managers should do to move to that capability?
Absolutely. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I work with line managers at every level to bring people onto their team as well as HR professionals. So we talk on a pretty much daily basis to leaders within the industry. I think that the leaders that are successful aren't ones that are best at directing work. They're the best at developing people. And that shift does sound pretty easy or pretty simple on the face of it, but it is genuinely hard, particularly when you're in a field environment and you've got the pressures of I need that job done today. I think that the challenge is that if you only ever assign tasks, you build dependency. And there's a bit of a cliche, but you always almost want to work your way to being redundant. If your team can work without you, you know you've done a good job as a leader. And if they can execute but can't adapt in an industry where tools, standards, inspection technology is continuously changing at the rate it is in our world, you need people who can adapt.
Yeah, and the thing when you're talking about with intelligent tools and things like that and adaptability, far too many companies, and I think also too, it's being recognized is that they will look at the emerging technologies, the advanced technologies, AI, other intelligent technologies, and things like that. They look at them as like kind of, I'm going to bolt this on. I'm just going to get a subscription to it, and we're going to be great. They don't really fully vet the different resources, the different technologies are out there, and look at strategically how can we integrate this, because that's the important thing. It's not just about doing a pilot program or we're going to try it and see what happens. You got to have some real function behind it because it's not going to work. It's just going to be wasted money at that point.
Mhm.
So the other thing too that I always like to point out is that there's a lot of digital inspection tools. There's a lot of other things, and AI could be utilized for intelligent workflows. It can automate systems and processes as well. I've seen AI based estimating for coatings contractors. And again, like I say, it's a good way to augment. So think if you are struggling finding estimators, but there is a very good quality AI program out there that could augment the existing estimators you have to be able to bid on more projects. That's a good thing for your company versus we couldn't get to these projects because we just didn't have the capacity to be able to pull everything together to get these estimates out. There's so many things to look at. So like warn everybody, don't just throw technology and say, "Oh, I'll get a subscription to it and try it." You got to have a real understanding. Plus, you got to stick to that, and you have to do your KPIs and measure it as well. When it comes to creating a culture that attracts modern modern talent instead of kind of repelling it. So in coatings and corrosion, a lot of times you'll have professionals who say, "Yeah, you don't want to go work for so and so because they have a high turnover, they go through a lot of people, they're hard to work for." I know that you work with all different type of companies. Some might be incredible to work with. Some might be the ones that, the rumors are out there that they're not the best to work with. What do you recommend for companies when it comes to having a good culture to attract new talent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the question on most companies' minds right now. I think how we bring new people into our industry as a whole, right? It's not just an individual business issue; it's an industry-wide issue. I think AMP Talent Force. I was talking to those guys at the AMP conference earlier this year. They're doing some great work, sort of giving awareness to the corrosion industry at a very early age, which is fantastic. I think from a company perspective and creating a culture, I think what attracts modern talent is having that visible career pathway, giving
Mm,
exposure to cross-functional work and leaders who are genuinely developing that next layer. I always say when working with any candidate at any level for any role, a clear and visible career pathway tells you everything you need to know about an organization. If you're interviewing somebody and you're a hiring manager, or you're an interviewee and you're in an interview and you ask, where could this role go in the next 5 years? And the answer is vague, it's not clear, or they brush it off. I think that creates a red flag both for the person being interviewed, but it also should raise alarm bells for the company, right? Are we built to retain the top talent? Are we built to be able to grow at all? I think that's having that clear career pathway is the number one factor that will mean that you can sort of retain and attract modern talent in this market.
mm. So when we look at talent strategies, and this is where you're going to have more talk time than I am, I
Mm.
hope. um, really to look at, what's worked for you, what like kind of your field tested recommendations at work. Originally, you talked a lot about, the competency based, training and everything like that, or I'm sorry, competency based hiring, and especially related to coatings and the corrosion roles. When it comes to continuous upskilling, how critical is that, and what should companies consider doing when it comes to upskilling their current staff and talent that they want to bring in?
Absolutely. I think the biggest needle mover that I try recommend for every company, the more integrated we get in with their hiring strategy, is define what good looks like at every level. So, for example, what does an early career inspector need to demonstrate from a knowledge, reporting, safety behavior standpoint? What does a mid-career operations manager or sales BDM need to show from a business acumen perspective? And that can be at every single level across every single job title. And once those profiles exist as a business, you hire against them instead of defaulting back to that 10 years experience and X cert. It means that you can hire based on what's been proven within the market, what's been proven within their experience in the business. And it does a couple of things that really create that clear picture. It sort of creates that clear line of sight, firstly, for what you need to do to progress within that business. It also motivates the workforce straight away to be able to grow and continue to learn. That goes beyond just time served. And then it gives you that ability to promote and retain the best talent, not just the most experienced. There are, I will say, I will put an asterisk on this. There are things in the market that you can only experience with time, and you only experience once you come across them. There is no sort of replacement for experience, but it does give you that ability to get to show sort of rising stars where previously they may have been skipped over because they don't have the time served.
Yeah, that such an important aspect of that and what you're talking about. The other aspect too, I think, when it comes to the upskilling, if you are not willing to take advantage of upskilling opportunities, in a way, you're kind of broadcasting to your employer that, maybe you're not the type of person who could become a team leader, become a director, become a vice president, become, whatever you might potentially have a career path at your company or other companies. So I tell people continuous learning, it's a continuous improvement. You've got to continue to be able to stay fresh, look for other avenues to be able to apply yourself because that will help you in your career, especially in the progression. I work for Henkel here in the United States, and Henkel has what I want to talk about next is a very good mentorship program that people can sign up for. They have resources, they have a portal for it, they have documentation for it, they have ways for mentors and the mentees to be able to work and interact together, and other ways to kind of qualify the work they're doing together, but also to the KPI, is the mentee getting a lot of good assistance through a mentorship? Are you seeing today mentorship programs out there offered by companies?
I am. I will say not nearly as sort of prevalent as they need to be. I
Yeah.
think there's a genuine knowledge transfer crisis might be a bit of a tough word, but there's definitely an issue facing the market. I think there's, as we mentioned earlier, there's people with 25, 30 years experience, sort of looking at in the next couple of years leaving the market. And with them goes enormous amount of applied knowledge, right? And there's also more green, newer people in the market, but they're so far ahead on a digital fluency perspective. I think a mentorship structure where there's a give and take, not just a one-way street, means that these very experienced field guys, office guys, whoever it is, can upskill themselves and still learn with a couple of years left in the industry. And also we're transferring knowledge for the more greener people coming into the market in their first stage of their career, which is definitely sort of focusing in on career development.
Yeah. For everyone watching, there is no, I'm unbiased in this because I'm friends with all the different talent search firms that are out there. Pangea is not, and they're not compensating me for any of this. So what I'm going to say too, I think it's important for companies, be it an owner, a contractor, whatever you work in coatings and corrosion, to consider really kind of partnering with Pangea and the other talent firms that are out there, especially if they work in a certain important sector like midstream oil and gas. I think it's important to be able to do that because when you partner with providers like this, they're really able to, like Charlie is really great at finding people that will benefit your operation, benefit your company, your team, whatever you're looking to do. So I think it's super critical for people not to wait and say, well, I guess we need to work with Charlie, but to try to start working with Charlie as soon as possible so that there could be more of a partnership. Am I wrong in saying that, Charlie?
I'd be a very bad recruiter if I said yes. So no, I think you're absolutely spot on, right? And I think there's so much value you get rather than just having a CV with working with a specialized recruiter. Um, and I will say that there are some absolutely fantastic recruitment agencies and recruiters out there. There are also very bad ones, just like in every role. I think recruiters can sometimes get all tarred with the same brush, but where I see companies that are most successful with their partnership, either with us or with other agencies, is moving towards that more specialized talent firm. The generalist recruitment model hasn't worked for some time, and it
Hmm.
absolutely doesn't work in coatings and corrosion. The competency profiles are too specific, the market's just too niche, and the difference between a good hire and a bad hire is just too consequential. I think the more specialized firms, outside of just having that deeper market knowledge, bring that pre-mapped talent pool, the deep understanding of technical requirements, and ability to assess candidates against role specific competencies rather than just a job description and keywords on a CV. They also are able to provide much more detail, like salary bandings and market information. We're just continually talking to other companies, candidates from other businesses, and we can give that lay of the land and true transparency on where the market's heading. You might be a little bit below or a little bit above what other companies are paying. You looking at what's truly a motivator for the top talent outside of just salary, and how to bring people on, and how to be attractive rather than just sitting in an office or in a room and flinging CVs and hoping they land. It's that much more in-depth knowledge. And I will say on top of that is the best people that I've worked with in this market, they're not on LinkedIn or any job boards, or their profiles are pretty bare bone. I think most of the candidates or people that I've placed, especially over the last year and a half or 2 years, are coming from referrals, coming from these conferences, industry meetups, and a generalized recruitment company aren't just going to spend the resources doing it. Where I mean, you'll see me in my cowboy hat and boots at most of the events, or we'll bump into other recruiters. The recruiters in our market that are specialized are there, and they're meeting talent and potential customers, and that's where you get the best talent.
Yeah, and again, like I say, with the firms that are there out there, especially the ones that specialize, midstream oil and gas, for
Mm,
example, with Pangea, be proactive with them, not reactive. Um, in closing out this live stream, what I want to really kind of encourage everyone who's watching uh, to make sure that you first off you hit the like, but the second thing you do once Charlie and I are done, this live stream is archived on LinkedIn, on YouTube as well. Please take it, share it with someone, a work colleague, share it with an industry friend, share it with anyone who would really get value out of listening and reviewing what Charlie and I talked a lot about. And the other aspect I wanted to leave with everybody is that this is the reason why Coatings Talk exists. It's about creating that community out there. It does say coatings obviously in the series name, but I do all things coatings and corrosion. I don't favor one over the other. Both are very important to me. Both are very important collaboration and working together. So I just want to kind of reinforce with everybody that Coatings Talk really is that a hub, but it also can be one that pulls together the workforce, the technology, and the industry, especially at looking at where modernization's taking us. Um, Charlie, in closing out the live stream, uh, any last thoughts? And then how can people get in contact with you?
yeah, absolutely. In terms of any last thoughts, like if you got any questions about hiring plans, I'm more than happy to be here as a resource. If you want to just bounce ideas off, I can tell you generally what works, what doesn't work, what some good ideas are, and use my experience for that. I think the best way to find me, I've got LinkedIn. I think it's Charlie Hill at Pangea is my LinkedIn. My email address, I'll put it in the link after, but it's charlie.hill at pangea-ts.com. And then my LinkedIn profile has my cell phone, and you can reach me at mostly any point. There's sometimes I'm hard to reach. I've got other commitments, but most of the time I'm here 24/7. So yeah, I think what I will say is that when you're hiring, it's very much a people's we're dealing with people. A million things can go wrong. Where I've seen success in hiring is getting lots of little things right throughout the hiring process. So don't necessarily over focus on one and under focus on the other. It's about stacking that hiring process to be successful. So yeah, any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. Everyone, have a good rest of your afternoon, your evening, or morning, no matter where in the world you're watching this live stream.